one of the top questions that I get asked no matter where I go or who I'm with is, how can you rock so hard for Jesus if you can't touch him, see him, feel him, taste him, all that other stuff? And my answer to that is that I met him. I had a burning bush moment, and hopefully my testimony can help inspire you to ask for your own burning bush moment or even just strengthen your relationship with God. So let's get into it.
Just pulled up to the house, don't feel like getting out, I'ma just lay back.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Kayla. This is Coffee with Kay, and today I actually have some more coffee because, guys, it's Monday and y'all already know this is a heaping cup of dark coffee, no sugar. So with that being said, I am super excited that you guys are back here joining me. As you can tell by the title of this video today, we're talking about my testimony, how I got my faith, where it came from, and why I can rock so heavy with Jesus. Hopefully this is able to inspire you as well. So I want to give you guys a little bit of backstory before we get into the deep stuff. Growing up, I was grown up around spirituality. My parents and grandparents were Christian. My great-grandparents were Christian. And actually, my great-grandparents and my grandparents were pastors. So I grew up front row in the pews, nodding off in church, getting pinched to wake up, listening to all of the Bible stories, and sometimes even them going over my head just because I was so young at the time, not knowing that all of those seeds that were being planted would get watered by God as I grew up. So with that being said, that's kind of my background. And sometimes as kids, it's easy to just go along with the motions and not necessarily understand why you're doing something, but just do it because somebody told you that that is what you were supposed to do. So with that being said, there was no big relationship between me and God, but I was religious, meaning I practiced things. I went to church, I went to Bible study, I was in the choir, all of that stuff. And when I say since I was young, I mean since I was a baby up until really my junior and senior year of high schools, it was just, kind of routine for me. Now, as I began to grow in my spirituality with God, I'd say about junior to senior year of high school, I was really craving my own intimate encounter with God. I would read Bible stories about how God showed up, like the burning bush moment that Moses had in the desert. And I would just crave that. And so I started praying like, God, give me a moment where I can see you, where I can experience your power, because I don't just want to read about these things. I want to have a personal relationship with you. And because some people will never read the Bible, I wanted to be able to talk to people and share within the book of Kayla and have a great story of faith that they can say, wow, if she can do it, I can do it. So with that being said, that was my prayer. Started in junior year, and everything was still good junior year. I hadn't got that moment, but God did not forget. He definitely remembered me, because that brings me to senior year of high school. And backtracking just a little bit, I know some of you all have heard, be careful what you pray for, or be specific about what you pray for, because if you are not specific and you leave out your desires to God, you just left your prayer up for interpretation. So you basically are saying, this is what I want. I don't necessarily care how I get it as long as I get it. I wanted my encounter from God, not realizing that I was really praying for a test that I couldn't get through in my own strength, and that opportunity would allow God to show up in my situation and give me my encounter. So with that being said, the real story begins my senior year in high school. Throughout school, fortunately for me, and I know this is not everybody's story, I had a pretty easy time. I was nice to people. People were nice to me. I didn't really experience a lot of bullying and all of that other kind of stuff. I was really fortunate not to have gone through that. So high school was no different. I didn't really get into all of the gossip and all of the, crazy high school stuff. I stayed away from all of the sexual temptation that comes with high school. So I didn't have any of that drama. I just never up to that point had many major life trials of my own. So senior year came, and that was no different. I was elected social president of my dance team, and things were just going well. When it came to classes, I needed a challenge because school wasn't necessarily hard for me. So I took hard classes as elective, like calculus, not knowing that this was the year that God was going to use that challenge to get me ready for the real world. So the first day of calculus came, and I started gliding through the course because I was like, how hard could this really be? And to my defense, I thought that I was understanding all of this information. So I got my first test back 40. Boom. I was like, oh, whoa, what is this? So I had to take a step back. I said, you know what? We are going to reroute. And I wasn't one of those kids that didn't study. I actually liked studying in school. I still do to this day. So I said, okay, Kay, you know what? We can't be doing this. Let's reroute. Let's study, and let's ace the next test. I did all of that studying, I kid you not. Boom, I got the test back 50. What the heck? So it was in this moment, the second test, when I got my test grade back, that I knew that something about this experience was different than anything I had ever experienced before. So if you guys know anything about the grading system, you get a progress report in 3-week increments. So you get a progress report at 3 weeks, you get a progress report at 6 weeks, and then at 9 weeks, you get your report card. So with that being said, I had already failed my first 2 tests. I only had one other test coming up, and I was like, all right, I'm going to have a below passing grade for this first 3 weeks. So I was kind of shaky, but you know, you just get put on probation at that period. So I was like, okay, it's all right. I can level up the second set of 6 weeks. So I was kind of worried, but I wasn't really worried. So the first week of the second progress report is in, and I am studying my butt off. Not just studying, I am trying to put into practice the spiritual things that I have learned and was listening to in Sunday school. I'm not just working, I'm praying. So I'm like, all right, God, go ahead, get me through. I get down to the first test, guys. Guess what the heck I make? I don't honestly even remember the grade, but just know I failed, all right? Just know I failed. The second week in the second progress report term comes around, I have another test. And I was going to study groups. I was studying with friends. Like, I was like, this is not like me. I don't know what's going on. Second test back, fail. I was like, okay, at this point, I don't know what kind of didactic lesson God is trying to teach me, but this ain't cute no more. And mind you, during this time, I am still showing up at dance practice. I am still showing up in my residential role. I am still showing up for everybody else around me. No one knew that I was struggling at the time. And to all of my friends that can struggle in silence and be good on the outside, but you're breaking on the inside, I highly recommend therapy, because I will tell you, I know how that feels. I am the person that likes to make sure everyone else is okay before I am. And I did not know that at that moment, the way to manage that was to talk to somebody, not necessarily to hold it in and compact it so much so to where you just combust when things go wrong or when the needle hits the haystack, you know? So please, guys, talk to somebody. It doesn't even have to be a therapist. Make sure you have just a few people on your support team that can genuinely be there to listen when you need it. But at that time, as I mentioned, I did not have that. I didn't know that concept. So the only people who know really what I was going through was my mother and the dance instructor and the assistant dance instructor, because they were looking at the progress report like, all right, what's going on? Like, you have duties to do. So are you going to be able to fulfill your duties, right? The third week of the second progress report term comes around, guys. I freaking failed the test. I had failed 2 consecutive terms, which means I could no longer be the social president. And if I had failed another term, then I would be kicked off the dance team. So at this point, I had been stripped of my position. I was so sick about reading about how God showed up for everybody in the Bible. And then I prayed to you, and it's like, you go ghost. Where you at, player? Like, I was like, all right, chief, you can show up anytime now. And he didn't. And I just felt really betrayed. I felt angry. I felt like everything that I had been taught was a lie. And I was not only mad at myself because I had put an insurmountable pressure on myself to get my things together, because as an intellectual, I'm like, okay, how can I solve this and why can't I solve this? But I was also mad at God too. And at this point, all bets are off. I'm feeling emotional. I'm feeling unheard. I'm feeling unseen and unloved by God. And most of all, humiliated, because now I have to explain to everybody why I'm not their president anymore and why I'm still at practice, but I don't do the traditional roles that I was doing. So I was humiliated, which brings me to a little side note. Sometimes we may wonder, God, why did you have to bring me to my knees in order to tell me that? Like, you could have put that in a flashcard, a PDF, a PowerPoint, Spark Noted. I don't know. I would have gotten the picture. Why did you have to make me go through all of that to sit me down to let me hear from you? And sometimes the answer is that we can be so self-preserving, so self-righteous, that you don't even feel like you have to invite God into a situation. And that was my case. I had relied on myself and my smarts and my merits so much that I felt like I didn't need to ask God necessarily for his help, because I've been doing it this long by myself and it's been working out for me. And that is what God needed to break down in me. It was that pride, that self-sufficient attitude that says, okay, I can do it on my own. And God hates pride because it makes you think that you have gotten where you've gotten on your own, solely based on your own merit, with your own covering. And we completely forget to take into account the things that didn't happen to us, that we didn't even know were going to happen to us, but God covered us and was like, don't do this, don't go there. Or maybe made a car stop instead of keep on going, made that driver look up from their phone from texting on the highway. So now, with everything in shambles, with my pride just broken, my mom hired a private tutor for me. I went from school to dance practice to a private tutor. I could not fail another 3 weeks, because if I did, then that means I would be completely off of the dance team, and that just wasn't gonna happen. And I was just so physically and emotionally exhausted every single day. And there was one day where it just got too much, and I was on my way from the school and practice to the library to go to my tutor, and I literally said, God, you need to show up, and you need to give me a sign, a physical sign that you are still with me. And if you don't, I am going to lose my faith, because there is no reason in praying to a God that won't show up when you need him. So if you don't send me a sign, I am going to lose my faith. Now that was the part of the conversation that I remember that is etched in my mind forever, because it was such a strong statement, and I meant that. Because at that point I was like, what are the benefits of being a believer of a God that don't come through when you need him the most? So I was just fed up with God at that point. And I had told God some other choice things. There was a whole monologue involved. Like, I was just letting God have it in that moment. And that's why I always tell people God is not afraid of your raw emotions, because in that car, I said a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have, but in the wake of how I was feeling, there was no way for me to hold it back and still keep it all together. Like, it just came out raw. And so after my monologue to Jesus, I went inside to my tutoring appointment, and everything was good. But about 30 minutes in, I got a phone call from my mom, and my mom was like, hey, Kayla, this lady, was coming to see you. She told me the lady's name. Now, mind you, this is a lady that I have never met before. There was no prior relationship to this woman. She didn't even know my mom like that. She met my mom maybe one time in passing, but there was no former relationship that, she would have ever known what situation I was going through. So I was just like, okay, you know what, whatever. I'm falling asleep in this tutoring session anyway. So she gets to the library, she comes upstairs, and she asked if I could come with her to the bathroom. So at this point, I'm like, okay, weird place, but whatever. So I get up and I go to the bathroom with this lady. So the first thing that she tells me when we get into that bathroom is she closes the door. Mind you, there's nobody else in here. She says, God heard you in the car. He sent me here to tell you that you cannot give up. Oh my gosh, can you say chills? Mind you, there was nobody else in the car with me. I didn't have this woman's number. Nobody knew her. My mom didn't even have her number. Like, she had to get my mom's number from somebody else. Nobody knew what was going on. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't even know that God listened to me like that. I was just like, oh my gosh. She started regurgitating back to me, literally verbatim, some of the things in the car that I had told God, some of the questions that I had for him. And she started telling me the reason why I was going through this was because it was something bigger than me. Like, I may not know why now, but I will see in the end, and that it was to build my faith and all of this other stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, burning bush moment. So of course, at this point, I am hysterically crying. There's snot all over my face, snot all over her shirt because I'm hugging her, all kinds of things. But it was in that moment that God showed me that he heard me, and that the assignment on my life was so big to where I could not give up, because there are millions of people not just attached to me, but my faith. And the same goes for you guys. You may not feel like you are going to do anything or are doing anything significant or enough to impact millions, but let me tell you, you never know what seeds that you plant in people, whether it be faith seeds, whether it be your testimony that other people are in need of. You may not see all of the faces that you've impacted, but you have. And that is so important, because we all are interconnected, guys. And it even says in the Bible that faith comes by hearing. So your testimony is building someone else's faith, whether you know it or not. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to fast forward through my story. I did not end up failing the report card. I ended up passing it was between a 72 and I think a 75, something like that. But I passed, and then I passed by a little bit extra, and I was so freaking excited. Like, I was so excited about that. Not only did I pass, I ended up being prom queen. I gave a graduation speech. So I ended up getting a lot back that I felt like was taken away from me. And I say all of that to say, sometimes our burning bush moment can only come when we're walking in the desert. Not only was this needed for me to set the foundation for my faith, especially before I went off to college in the real world, and there's all kinds of things influencing you, but I also needed this because it gave me the ability to empathize with others going through similar situations and going through dark seasons where all they have is their faith, and being able to encourage them, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because I've been through it before. And there is a depth of humanity that can only come by going through trials and tribulations. So when you see me on social media posting videos rocking this hard for Jesus, it is because he met me where I was at. He came down and spoke to me through somebody else everything that I told him, and reassured me that my suffering would not be for waste. After a conversation nobody but God knew I was having, and sent someone to give me a physical sign that he is still God, and that just in the nick of time, he can come down and give you a word that will sustain you and that will renew you and will give you what you need to keep on going. Now, this is by no means the only way that God can talk to you, but this is my story, and this is how God met me where I was. I'm always here to listen and to hear people's testimonies and how they learn to know God, because relationship is different from religion, guys. Religion is a set of things that you can do over and over, but if they have no meaning, if you don't have relationship, then you are doing those all in vain. Relationship with God is something that I am super big on, and I never talk about anything that I don't know anything about, because that's just me. I don't like looking stupid out here, okay? This is just something that in my devotional time, I was asking God, okay, what video should I put out next? And I started writing on this one, and something about this one grabbed, and God was like, yeah, go ahead and put this one out. So I was like, okay, God, you know what? I'm not gonna argue with you. And there are still days when I feel like less than superwoman, and I get overwhelmed, and I feel crushed by all of my thoughts. But in those moments, that time, that foundation cannot be broken. And so even in my lowest moments, I know I can always trust God, because if he showed up then, he can show up now. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Leave your comments, leave your testimonies below. Reach out to me on social media. You can email me, all of that good stuff. But until next time, guys, I'm Kayla. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you soon.
And a nigga catch a break, give a pretty brown girl her